Today on Locked On Rockies, Ezequiel Tovar has been good and lots of promise to start his career, but what will it take for him to be a top 5 shortstop, not just in the NL, but all of baseball?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 16th day of October in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on those streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Every time you like a video, when you leave the comments, when you leave 5-star reviews, and when you subscribe to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, you're helping the show grow, and I really, really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for rocking and rolling with us here all throughout the offseason as we get ready for Rockies baseball in 2025. Today on the show, I want to take a look at how Ezequiel Tovar compares to other shortstops in Major League Baseball. There's really, I would say this season proved that the shortstop position is loaded with elite talent, but the Rockies now have 3 Gold Glove candidates yet again, and Ezequiel Tovar is one of them. We'll talk a little bit more about those Gold Gloves here throughout the week, but since Tovar was nominated, I kind of wanted to focus in on him real quick and see where, just kind of how he compared, how he finished up, and the areas of strengths and weaknesses for Ezequiel Tovar. And then want to talk a little bit. I've been seeing weak path to the through the playoffs for the Yankees, and I want to see if that's valid there as well. We'll dive into all that and more. Before we do, got to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I was curious, and I was super pumped to see Ezequiel Tovar nominated yet again for a Gold Glove. 2 years in the league, 2 nominations for Gold Glove. Always awesome. And most likely he's not going to win it, even though the argument can be made that his defense is the real strong suit of his game when you're looking at advanced metrics and when you're looking at some of the stuff that Fangraphs does. Fangraphs is who we're looking at here. And Ezequiel Tovar, according to they have it ranked, and there's a bunch of different stuff you can rank by. But if you're going to rank by WAR, Ezequiel Tovar comes in as the 10th best shortstop from this year. So right at the halfway point. He's in the top 10. He's not in the bottom 10, which is good. He's right on the line there, of course. He just barely missed out on passing Trey Turner this year. He finished the year at a 3.9 WAR. Tovar, 3.7. Dansby Swanson, 4.3. Mookie Betts, 4.4. Seager, 4.5. Adames, 4.7. Ellie De La Cruz, 6.4. Francisco Lindor at 7.8. Gunnar Henderson at 8. And then Bobby Witt Jr. ran away with it there at an astounding 10.4 WAR. So when you see those numbers and when you see all that stuff, you're like, yikes, that is the path to get up there, to get up there with the best. It's a little bit far. But then you start looking at it. Then you start dissecting it a little bit more, and you realize if Ezequiel Tovar takes a step forward on offense, he is going to be a top 5 shortstop. Because when you look at the numbers here, he's got a negative offensive rating here, according to Fangraphs, at negative 4.2. And I usually use Baseball Reference. So some of the stuff I'm a little bit a little bit different. But I just want to highlight that because every other player ahead of Ezequiel Tovar in these top 10 rankings is positive on both offense and defense, with the exception of Mookie Betts, who is minus 0.6 on defense last year. So to get to number 5, to get to the top 5 in baseball, and at least comparing it to this last year, Ezequiel Tovar only needs to make a 1 WAR jump. And how he can do that is becoming better on offense. And so what I mean, let's take a look at the numbers of Ezequiel Tovar compared to these other guys in the top 10. Because let's face it, the defense is incredible. He is out of all of the shortstops listed on here, Ezequiel Tovar's defense ranks in the top 5. I believe. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, he is 5th in the top 5 defensively rated shortstops in baseball. He trails behind Dansby Swanson, who had the most at 18.9, then Bobby Witt Jr. at 17.5, Francisco Lindor at 17.4, and Ellie De La Cruz at 16.7. So defensively right now, Ezequiel Tovar is right there with the best. Obviously, he's not number 1, but he's top 5. He's already reached that top 5 status. He's a top 5 shortstop defender. At least he was in 2024. However, if you were to rank all the shortstops by their offense, by the offensive numbers, Ezequiel Tovar is bottom 5 in out of shortstops. Ezequiel Tovar is one of 4 shortstops last year, at least on Fangraphs' chart here, that had negative, that finished the year negative on offense. Negative 4.2 for Tovar. Volpe finished negative 6.0. Rafaela finished at negative 13, and Arcia for Atlanta finished at negative 21.2. So there's the big glaring issue. There's the thing that's preventing Ezequiel Tovar from already being a top 5 shortstop statistically in the game. So do I think that Ezequiel Tovar can take the steps up and get himself back in the right position? Absolutely. Because here's the deal. For Ezequiel Tovar, when you're looking at the numbers here, so let's go back here and look. I don't think he's going to be I think Bobby Witt Jr. has proven to be like the next thing. I don't necessarily think that Tovar is going to be. I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. blew everyone else away in terms of shortstop production this year, and was so far ahead. He's ahead by 10 points on the offensive rating. He's slightly ahead in defense, but well above, has cemented himself at the top. But so what does he do so well? What does Tovar need to try to go after if he wants to imitate Bobby Witt Jr.? Well, first things first, the walk percentage. 8% walk rate for Bobby Witt Jr. Ezequiel Tovar, 3.3% walk rate. K percentage, strikeout percentage, 15% for Bobby Witt Jr., 28.8% for Ezequiel Tovar. Then going into the batting average. Ezequiel Tovar finishes the year 269. Bobby Witt at 332. OBP 295 for Tovar, 389 for Bobby Witt. Slugging percentage 469 for Tovar, 588 for Bobby Witt Jr. And the list goes on and on. So it starts on the offensive concerns and the offensive issues that we've already been focused on. That is the main goal. If Ezequiel Tovar can cut the strikeout rate, increase the walks, and continue to develop as a extra base hitter, which we saw, guy was hitting more doubles than anybody on the team last year, was for doubles, was hitting doubles at a rate that we haven't seen since Todd Helton. So the foundation for success is there. But when we're looking at the type of jump for it, when we're talking top 5, because I've been sitting here pretty confident in Tovar's ability, he's got a long way to go to get up there. I mean, again, Gunnar Henderson, number 2 on the list, he walks at a 10.8%. Got the high strikeout rate as well, 22.1%. That's more comparable. But Tovar still has 6.7, still strikes out 6.7% more than Gunnar Henderson. Already striking out nearly a quarter of the time at 22% for Gunnar Henderson. Tovar is striking out. So you could basically count, and he's not the only Rocky. If he gets 4 at-bats in a game, Tovar was striking out at least once, statistically. And that is the problem. And that circles back to the core of the issues for the Colorado Rockies was the strikeouts in general. Remember, tying for the worst strikeout rate in all of baseball, and only were behind the Mariners by like 8 strikeouts last year from leading the league in strikeouts. And that includes Ezequiel Tovar. Everyone in the top 5 there has a walk rate of 8 or higher. The highest is Willy Adames and Gunnar Henderson at 10.8 in the top. And the strikeout rates, it's interesting because there's only one person in the top 5 that strikes out more than Ezequiel Tovar, and that's Elly De La Cruz. Elly De La Cruz also steals bases more than, that he has that whole other factor that can back up some of this stuff. But the point is that Ezequiel Tovar's batting average is better than Cruz's, but his OBP isn't, and his slugging is a little bit under. Ezequiel Tovar, in order to take that next step, has to take the next step on offense. He has to be we know how good he can be. We've seen moments where he's been great. And again, this is it's just you have to compare him to these other young guys because these are guys that have similar to a little bit more. They're all close in experience outside of some of the big names, of course, Lindor, Adames, Seager, and Betts and such. But if you want to be the best, you got to be better than the best. And so I think the biggest thing that will help Ezequiel Tovar is cutting down on the strikeouts, because that is going to that means the walk rate hopefully goes up, the strikeout rate goes down, and the batting numbers go up as well, especially when it comes to driving in runs and stuff like that. Because there's a couple other stats we need to look at and compare Ezequiel Tovar to really highlight where he's lagging behind these elite shortstops, the top 5 shortstops in the game. We'll take a look at those stats and continue to explore this concept here coming up next in today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. Man, is it not prime sports time right now? We got basketball starting. We got WNBA wrapping up. We got hockey underway. We got baseball playoffs. We got football in full swing. And you can see all the action for yourself on FanDuel and get in on all the fun. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So that means you're going to be able to see the stats. You're following the game live. You're going to know exactly where to go. And then you can jump in on those money line bets, those parlays, those prop bets, those future bets, whatever you want to take a look at. FanDuel's got you covered because they are indeed America's #1 sportsbook. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. Our guy Sully's got you covered there as he's breaking down all things playoff baseball and everything else in the world of baseball. So don't miss out on that. So go check it out there. And we have been talking Ezequiel Tovar. Where does he rank amongst other shortstops here using baseball or Fangraphs? And we were highlighting percentages and averages and that stuff. But let's actually take a look at some of the big numbers and where Tovar can start cementing himself and start building up a little bit more to help him get into the mix of top 5 shortstops. Because, man, the shortstop position is loaded with talent, folks. Absolutely loaded with talent. I'm looking at an MVP candidate right here in Francisco Lindor. I'm looking at one of the most exciting players in baseball, Bobby Witt Jr. on this list. Stalwart veterans are on this list. Willy Adames, Corey Seager, Mookie Betts. We mentioned already Francisco Lindor. So how do Tovar's numbers compare to the top 5 here? So everyone in the top 5 for in terms of WAR, this is where wins above replacement is what we're ranking on. Everyone in the top 5 except for Elly De La Cruz hit at least 30 home runs. Bobby Witt Jr. hit 32, Gunnar Henderson hit 37, Lindor 33, De La Cruz 25, and Willy Adames 32. Ezequiel Tovar hit 26. So there's a little area, he can find himself there. But again, if you want to be in that top mix, if you want to get up there, that's another thing. I don't think it should be out of the question to think that Tovar can hit 30 bombs. We've seen the doubles. We've seen the power in the bat. We've seen the ability to slug. I don't think it should be that crazy to think that Tovar, if he continues to grow as a hitter, continues to build the strength, build up his strength and build up his process, I don't think it's out of the question for him to hit 30 home runs. 28 to 30, maybe. But he's now hit 20. Tovar hit 20 home runs in his first season, didn't he? Let's double check there as we double check here. Let's see here. He hit 15 home runs in 2023. So we've already seen now from one season turnover, we've seen Ezequiel Tovar increase his home runs by 11. The thing I'm a little hesitant and the thing I'm not in love with is the fact that RBI only increased by 5. Now, it's not just only him. It takes other Rockies getting on base for you to drive runners in, and especially where Tovar is in the lineup as well. If those guys aren't getting on, you don't have a lot of people to drive in. So, but when you're comparing that to 109 RBI from Bobby Witt Jr., 92 RBI from Gunnar Henderson, 91 from Lindor. Again, another comparison here, Elly De La Cruz, 76. If the big X factor, I think, between Elly De La Cruz and Ezequiel Tovar is stolen bases. Because, oh man, this just makes you laugh. Elly De La Cruz stole 67 bases last year. Tovar stole 6. Like, it's not like you're never going to be. There are few people in the game, if any, that steal bases like Elly De La Cruz. So I'm not focused on that. But I do want to not ignore stolen bases because in the top 5, minimum of 20 stolen bases from each one of these shortstops. Bobby Witt Jr., 31 stolen bases. Gunnar Henderson, 21. Lindor, 29. Elly De La Cruz, 67. And Willy Adames at 21. Ezequiel Tovar is at 6. And when you rate that, or when you rank that by stolen bases, by shortstops, he had the third least out of qualified shortstops. So again, do I need Ezequiel Tovar to be super aggressive on the bags? No. But if we're trying to put him into the top 5 shortstop categories, you can't fall that far behind. You can't be that far behind in statistical categories like that. That is at minimum, the top 5 has at least 15 more stolen bases than you. 15. And that is no small number. So strikeouts, stolen bases, and home runs. Areas where Tovar, if he takes a little bit of a jump, he's gonna have an argument. And here's another big kicker. RBI. In the top 5, again, I'm sorry, we already talked about RBI, didn't we? 109 RBI for Bobby Witt Jr., Gunnar Henderson 92, Francisco Lindor 91, Elly De La Cruz 76, Willy Adames 112. But again, the comparisons to Elly De La Cruz are fine. But if you want to be in that ranking, look at how far behind you are in that category. Outside of Elly De La Cruz, you are, what is that? At least 13, 14 off RBI wise from Henderson and Lindor. These are I'm just saying, these are areas where he has to be better because the elite shortstops are really changing the game, are turning the whole game completely around and being huge impact players. What's good news is, or what's the nice part for Ezequiel Tovar in this thing is, if you want to challenge yourself to get in that league, to get into that upper echelon of shortstop, it's still doable. It's a guy that I believe has the talents and the ability to get there. I don't necessarily sit here and think he's going to be number 1. I think the jump to get to where Bobby Witt Jr. is insane. I mean, I think Bobby Witt Jr. has is setting himself up to be a face of baseball type of guy. But I can see, when you really break it down, you take the stolen bases out of it. Ezequiel Tovar is right there with Elly De La Cruz and better in areas. But you can't negate 67 stolen bases. That's game changing right there. Ezequiel Tovar has to continue to find ways to be a game changer. And I'm not discouraged by where he's at on this list. Like I said, he is 1 WAR away from flopping from Willy Adames, and he's a top 5 shortstop in all of baseball. A 1 WAR improvement for Ezequiel Tovar, I don't think is that crazy. But it circles back to development. The Rockies bringing back the same people, the same coaches, which for Tovar might be a good thing. But can this staff help Ezequiel Tovar get to where he needs to go? Not need, I guess. Do we need him to be a top 5 shortstop? I guess no. But he's close. He's there. And I'm sure he wants to be one of the best in the business. And if he does start, and if we go through the first half of the season last year and Tovar continues to be an offensive threat, he's cut down the strikeouts, the walk rate's up, and we know the defense is going to be there, Tovar can be an all-star next year. And maybe that's the path we want to follow. Gold Glove finalist 2 years in a row, first 2 seasons. Third season, he's an all-star. How long did it take Ryan McMahon to get an all-star? Maybe we should be focused on that instead of top 10. But I think the path to the top 10 is open. And I think it's something that we'll need to keep an eye out as the season goes through next year. Ezequiel Tovar, work to be done, but certainly plenty of excitement to be had. Only 23 years old as well. But the thing about that, a lot of young, great shortstops in the game, man. Shortstop position, absolutely loaded in baseball. All right, let's take a quick break and then talk a little postseason. And do the Yankees have a weak path to the playoffs or through the playoffs? Let's talk about that coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. And it's not just baseball. They got you covered for concerts, plays, comedy, whatever you need tickets for, Game Time has you covered. They got last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seats, and their lowest price guaranteed. You can't miss on Game Time. My favorite part is you can toggle that all-in pricing, see exactly what you're going to pay up front while getting a view from your seat. So you're going to know exactly what you're going to pay. You're going to know exactly where you're going to be sitting and what to expect when you get to the venue, giving you that peace of mind that you want. They also got the lowest price guarantee. If they don't have the lowest price, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We are also brought to you by PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And it's super simple. Get your lineup of players, and then you just say more or less on statistical areas. Base hits, stolen bases, walks, strikeouts, home runs, more or less. It is that simple. No one stealing players off the waiver wire from you, not having to compete with those locked-in super fantasy experts. It is just you against the numbers. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks don't hit. You can check it out for yourself on the PrizePicks app. When you download the app and use code LOCKEDONMLB, you're going to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup when you use the code LOCKEDONMLB on the PrizePicks app. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk chat here on the Locked On Podcast Network and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Be part of the show. Let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Did the Yankees have an easy path to the playoffs, taking down the Royals and now facing the Guardians here in the second series, and then whoever ends up winning on the NL side? Is that an easy path to the playoffs? It depends on how you look at the Guardians. I think that's really the biggest question. And unfortunately, the Guardians haven't necessarily been playing great baseball in this finale or in this ALCS. But I'm not going to negate the fact that Cleveland has been really good for a while. Cleveland only finished with 2 less wins than the Yankees in that time. And the Yankees also had to beat an exciting Royals team, which that played them well in that series, and actually taking a game off of them as well. I see where the Mets are coming from, or Mets fans are coming from. The Mets have to beat the Phillies. They have to beat the Dodgers. They have to beat, and they have to beat and the Brewers to get here. Absolutely loaded talent. But I ain't going to sit here and call the Guardians a pushover. And I ain't going to call the Royals a pushover either. There's a reason why 3 teams from the American League Central were the ones that made it past the wild card round. You can sit and again, it's format, it's this, it's whatever you want to say. But what I find in the beauty of the format and the baseball playoffs is do it in October. I was ready for the teams to bow out and lose out before I figured there would be upsets. I figured there would be this, and the upsets happened to be on teams that frankly weren't in that great a position. The Astros weren't the dominant force they were this year. They weren't that good. They finished with 2 more wins than the Royals. So for me to sit here and be absolutely stunned that and same with the Tigers as well, that the Astros got beat by the Tigers to set up that instead of an Astros matchup, I'm not. There were a lot of good teams throughout the American League this year, and same with the National League. And again, Mets fans have this weird thing where they're the lovable underdogs with the 3rd highest payroll in baseball. You're completely ignoring that fact. And if you're going to say that, yes, the path, pardon me, the path has been more difficult for the Mets, certainly. But everyone's comparable to the Mets. The real outliers in this playoffs were the Yankees, the Guardians, the Phillies, and the Brewers. They're all with the 90 wins. And you know what? The Phillies and the Brewers, they weren't good enough. It's just about, you can't complain about the path. You just got to play the people that you have. But I don't know. That's just me. What are your thoughts? Easy path to the playoffs for the Yankees? Let me know in the comments. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. We'll be back in action talking more Rockies baseball tomorrow. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. Our guy Sully's got you covered there. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.